Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
And welcome to another episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you everyone for tuning in again to our amazing show. And I'm gonna make this an unrunning joke now, just because it drives my co-host nuts. and it just bothers him to the extent of every time he just shakes his head and goes, "God damn it, why didn't you get a new intro? You have the same intro." But we decided that we would try recording remotely, because starting next week we are going to all be in studio together almost every time we record, because with the new Tascam we bought for the microphones, and we're getting Hannah an upgraded microphone, we're trying to bring it all localized again so that we can bring a better sound and hopefully a little bit better quality on Hannah's side to everybody. So if you'd like to support us, you can share our information, you can sponsor us on iTunes, give us a rating, or you can go over to our Patreon and throw $1 an episode at Hannah, because that's all he's really technically worth there. So, but
I want 100 pennies, man.
You ain't getting anything. Without further ado, though, let me introduce and welcome to the show again my co-host, Mr. Chris Hanna. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm doing great. I had half a day of work, so I got to do stuff around the house and be the handyman house guy. It was nice. Otherwise, I'm usually at work morning till night, and I'm, all work and no play to make Chris a good boy.
Yeah, and I know how that is, because I had to till the garden this morning, and then I had to go back out and get pallets, because my wife's building garden beds out of pallets now. So I had to go get pallets.
Old. We are so
we
old.
Are. And then I came back, and I'm like laying on the couch, and I'm like, man, I'm really tired. My back hurts. And she's like, you better get up. You better get up. Well, I got a baby shower. I got to go help your mom run, and blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, fuck.
Oh, yeah.
And then,
Pinterest furniture.
Yeah, Pinterest furniture. But I tell you what, they were free because it's just pallets. But building the garden bed, the raised garden is supposed to be a lot better. It keeps the moles out, and I don't know. I mean, I want my berry bushes to last for, as long as I live in this house. But enough of gardening talk with Cellar Door Skeptics, because you probably did not tune in to hear us talk about the gardening or any of that pertinent information. Tonight we have a special guest, and I say that every time too, but tonight is a really special guest. And if anybody goes back and listens to any of the interviews we've done, we have one of my favorite guests on the show. And in all seriousness, Abbie is literally probably the funnest person to have a conversation with. It's always knowledgeable, and she always talks about science. So she kind of tickles Hannah's fancy, because he likes science as much as I do, if not a little bit more. And she's always been a great guest whenever we had her on some of the old programs we used to be on. So without further ado, for those of you who do not know Abbie is a PhD researcher at Emory University. And she studies HIV, and she's working on making an HIV vaccine. Please give a round of applause to our guest, Abbie Smith. How are you tonight, ma'am?
Great. How you guys doing?
Awesome. And we say this every time, but it's like about every 6 months, 7 months, you join one of the shows that we're on, and maybe hopefully this show will stick around for a little bit longer than the last shows that we were on. But it seems like every 6-7 months you're on one of our shows. So
it's always fun to be here. You guys have great questions, and do your homework, because we were chatting a little bit earlier about how in academia, you specialize and specialize and specialize and specialize. And what I do is very specific, and yet you guys still always have great questions that lots of other people have too. So I love to be here and answer them.
Yeah, and we like, you've done vaccine research, and that's honestly originally what drew me to having you on as a guest a long time ago, because I'll be honest, and I admitted this before, I used to be anti-vaccination. Now, it's been 3.5, 4 years since I've been that way, but, before, so when I came out of the closet as an atheist, I kind of, started to do the research, and that was one of the things that fell off my radar rather quickly. It's like, oh, no, there's the science, oh, I'm done with vaccines, see ya, have a nice life. And so to me, this is kind of like a personal type conversation. I enjoy that. I like to talk about vaccines now, only probably because that was one of the remnants from my religious past that never disappeared until I became a full-fledged skeptic. But tonight we're not going to talk as much about vaccines, and I don't want to steal too.
We can. If you want to talk about the stuff I've been doing lately and the fun stuff in the pipeline in HIV prevention and treatment, we can still talk about vaccines.
All right, so good. We will. We'll talk about the HIV vaccines, and honestly, yeah, that's part of the reason we wanted to have you on, because I don't know if last time we got to cover all of that, and I know it's, like I said, it's been 6 or 7 months, and I'll have to pull the old clip of last time we had a conversation with you.
And there's stuff coming out, like even I have a hard time keeping up with it. I mean, every other day there's something totally novel coming up in the HIV research world. So I'm sure we didn't catch everything last time.
Well, we could start basically just kind of like what got you into that. So like you were probably relatively interested in science when you were growing up as a young person, and what kind of drove you into that direction? What made you think that this is where I want to go, and the torturous and arduous process that I want to live my life in? Because we all know how fun it is to be postdoc.
Glamorous. I love telling this story because I grew up in a little farm town in the middle of Missouri. I didn't know any PhDs. I didn't really understand what a PhD meant other than you went to school forever. I didn't understand it. So like most smarter kids in small towns, I was like, well, okay, so I should do something in science because that's what smart kids do. And my choices are engineering or becoming a physician. And my brother's an engineer. And he would talk to me about the stuff that he did, and my eyes would just glaze over and I would just pass out. I didn't want to do that. So I was like, well, okay, I don't really think I want to become a physician, but that's my other option, so here we go. And I was a hardcore pre-med in undergrad. And then one Friday I skipped Latin, and just to show what a nerd I am, I told my professor I was going to skip class that day to go to a presentation by an HIV researcher. And I just thought that was this presentation was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And they ended up setting up an undergraduate research experience for my university, because I also went to a university in a small farming town. Like, we didn't have a BSL-3 facility and patient samples with HIV and that sort of thing. So I spent a summer doing HIV research, and I was like, holy crap, this is so much more fun than the stuff I was doing in clinics as a pre-med shadowing. So that's how I got into HIV research. Like, it was unexpected, love at first sight. So glad I found it.
It almost sounds like you found God.
It is. It really is. It was angels, choir, the light shining down from heaven. Like, you should do this. And really, honestly, like, you need to have that moment before you go into science. We were chatting about this a bit before earlier. You do not make money doing this. You can go to the NIH website and see exactly how much someone with a PhD, a postdoc, you start out at year 0, year 1, year 2. You can see exactly how much you will get paid, and you get paid that amount whether you live in Boston or whether you live in Oklahoma. Doesn't matter. That's how much you get paid. And it's not a lot for someone who spends 4, 5, 6, 7 years getting their PhD.
Wow.
If you do not have something, I love my work so much. And if you don't have that sensation about something, you shouldn't get a PhD. I know a lot of people, I would say even in the atheist skeptic community, because we do kind of put science up on a pedestal. There's some kids that jump into graduate degrees without really understanding what it means to work that job as a profession. They kind of have a rose-colored glasses impression of what it means to be a working scientist. and they get into their PhD programs and they're miserable. And yeah, so you need to have something you're obsessed with. You need to have a calling from God to get into it.
Well, and that's good because, I mean, I guess if you're going to spend the money on the degree, you better like what you do because you're going to be paying for it for quite a while.
No. Luckily, no. And so you get paid so little that actually your degree is paid for by the government, the U.S. government. Oh. So you actually don't have to pay money to get a PhD because they know no one would actually pay for that degree to get paid what you get paid afterwards. I mean,
so do they just count that as kind of like saying, so let's say your degree is, I don't know, $200,000 or something like that, and they're like, oh, well, you're going to be working here for the rest of your life, so we're going to equate that out of, this is X amount of dollars each year you're going to be getting.
Is that how they sell
it? That's another thing that's sort of mandated by the government, how much graduate students get paid, and what kind of school fees get covered and that sort of thing. So that being said, if you do find something you're absolutely in love with in science and want to get an advanced degree, don't let the cost, your worries about cost, hold you back, because not only is the school paid for, but you also get paid a stipend to live on top of that, because your job is doing your research, or in some cases teaching and contributing to the field.
Yeah. So how long have you been doing HIV research and research on HIV vaccines?
If you go back to that undergrad, that first step, math. Shit, we're old.
I was gonna say that's kind of a bad question. She's gonna throw a big number.
It's over 10 years at this point. I've been doing it, and over 10 years since I've been working, and longer than that since that first undergrad experience. So I've been doing this a while now. But yeah, actually, since I started working at Emory, I really got to jump into the vaccine side of things and the vaccine trials and interpreting the vaccine results, because we actually work with non-human primates here. So I hit like every single skeptic button in that. I study HIV, I study evolution, I work with non-human primates, so animal research, I do vaccines, we use genetically modified everything in our vaccines. So if you name any of the hot topics in skepticism, I'm in it.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, in terms of the skeptic community, I enjoy the evolutionary side quite a bit, and part of it's probably because until high school I went to a private school and I never got that. I was basically never introduced to that. And while I can't say evolution was a big reason I left my faith or my religion, when I left and officially started to understand the world, it plays a big role in how I actually have conversations with people. And I go out of my way, I used to go out of my way to engage everybody, but now I kind of go out of my way more to engage individuals about evolution, because it seems to be a big debate topic all of a sudden over the last 2 years with creationists. They just seem to be coming out of the woodwork.
They kind of come in cycles, like they pop up and then they get driven back to their holes and then they come out again. But I would honestly say that my interactions with creationists, like I've been doing that forever too. I mean, again, growing up in a farming town, I didn't actually grow up in a creationist or religious household at all. So this was always a foreign concept to me, the creationist side of things. But engaging with creationists as an undergraduate and a graduate student, and the kind of understanding you have to have of that topic to engage creationists, to not only their side of things, but your side of things, like why, not only that creationist claim is stupid, but no, scientifically, why is that not right? I think that gave me a better understanding of evolution than I would even say some of my peers who didn't grow up in the Midwest and in the South and grow up having to deal with creationists and creationist claims. Mm-hmm. So thank you, creationists, for making me a better scientist. It really is. Everything I do, absolutely everything I do, requires an understanding of evolution. So not only just so one thing I study is the transmission of HIV from one person to another. What are the selective pressures on that? What are just artifacts? So sometimes shit just happens when it comes to HIV. And so the really early events and how the virus escapes your immune system. So not only everybody knows that HIV mutates a lot, and so that's why it changes, but that's really tightly controlled evolution, because if it mutated too much, then it would accumulate all of these bad mutations and it would run itself into the ground. But how much it mutates is very, very specific and in tune to our immune system. So the way our immune system fights HIV is by evolving. So your immune system changes over time to fight the virus. And right now I'm studying like this really awesome co-evolutionary dance between these two like super mutating populations. It's so cool. Creationists couldn't do this. You can't do this.
They don't believe that any of these are really possible. They just say it's HIV. God created it to damn humankind.
It's fundamental concepts of evolution that at this point even laymen in the skeptic community understand. Like, yeah, a creationist could not perform this work.
So I guess, and that kind of leads us into one of the first blogs that Hannah happened to find upon, and it was from futurism.com, and the blog is entitled "Scientists Find a Weak Spot in HIV That May Pave the Way to a Vaccine."
Yeah, so you can find that exact headline about every 6 months or so. Yeah. So this last one is really cool. I'll tell you what the deal is. So, the best way to describe this. With an HIV vaccine, one of our problems is, like I said, HIV changes a lot. So normally what a vaccine does, it trains your immune system to fight a virus or fight a bacteria. And think of it like, it's giving the immune cells a sniper rifle and a picture of its target and saying, okay, you see this, you shoot it, you kill it, done. That's great for polio. That's great for smallpox. That's great for pertussis. That's great for measles, mumps, rubella. That's great for lots of things. It's not so great when it comes to, let's say, influenza, because you get one influenza vaccine and you show your immune system, let's say, 3 different, most wanted pictures and say, okay, shoot these guys. But if a different influenza, you're exposed to it, they won't know to shoot it. And so that's why you have to get a different influenza vaccine every year. And we kind of guess to see what to put it. It's not really guessing, educated guessing on what to put in a vaccine.
Careful, you will have people that will say, "Well, you're just guessing."
No,
why
it's
the
a
fuck
big
would we do
lotto. It's one of those big rolling lotto ball things, and that's exactly how we do it. No.
It's going to say you just go in the backyard and pick up like 6 things, grind them down, call it.
We got it. But no, so then we come to HIV. And with HIV, we have no picture basically to show your immune system. And so with the vaccines we might be giving your immune system these sniper rifles, and they have no idea what to shoot at, and we get no coverage whatsoever. So the idea is there are labs that are hunting for these things called broadly neutralizing antibodies. And these are very specific proteins that have evolved in a patient that can detect and stop lots and lots and lots of different kinds of HIV. Their immune system has never seen all those different kinds of HIV, but they've made a protein that just by chance alone can stop lots of them. And so the idea is, maybe with a vaccine, that's our most wanted poster. That's our shotgun. That's how we do it. And so every 6 months or so, scientists will find a new one, and it will have a new target. So HIV, the protein that gets targeted by your immune system is huge, and it moves. So you have to think these things are really, really tiny. So you've got the Brownian motion thing. And so you've got this structure that's like doing this, and an antibody might stick to it, and it's like, not gonna. It's really complicated. So my kind of bored tone with that headline is that we've got lots of these, and we've found lots of weak points, and they have yet to be translated to a viable vaccine strategy and even a viable therapy for people who are already infected at this point. We've had these for 20, 25 years, and they're neat, and they're awesome, and they're great laboratory reagents, and they teach us some things about how the virus works, but
yeah, it's not the one. It's not the one. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to post this question to you, is as someone who's in the field, we see a lot of people are trying to get funding, the entire getting money, getting funding. You need these kinds of things to bring it back into the public eye, to bring it back into the donors' eyes, to people who have the money, who are funding this kind of stuff. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword. You need this, like, here, we've made progress. There's these new things that are happening, but also we have the opposite end. It's like people are making claims really early. It's like, oh, can you kind of wait until you have some more info? And so I don't know. I'm not in that area, but that's got to be like, what do you think? It just keep going the way it's going, or does that need to be changed at all?
I don't know how to translate it really to the public, because things. I mean, we have learned so much in the past 30 years, not only about HIV, but about like fundamentally how our immune system works, and even just basic components that we didn't know existed in 1985. I mean, there are therapies now for totally different diseases that have come to be because of our study of HIV and how it has just enhanced our understanding of us. But yes, it's. I mean, we just had a charity bike event last weekend for HIV vaccine research, where it's called AV200, and these folks will ride their bike 100 miles on Saturday and 100 miles on Sunday, to fundraise for HIV vaccine research. And how do you tell them, dude, we have learned so much, but we are still far away. And thank you. I mean, it's just incredible that these people are contributing. But building morale of the troops, it's a tough point, because listen, if this were easy, we would have done it in 1986, and that's what they thought. Everybody thought, look, this is just another virus. We have vaccines. This is not a big deal. And just this creature is something that we have not previously encountered or had to deal with, and it is taking some of the best minds of multiple generations at this point to stop it. Do I think we will? Absolutely. Do I think the key is, we found this weak spot? No, no.
Yeah, with the evolution of medical science and everything, there's a lot of wonderful things that are happening. And another article that we had included, just in the little the outline, whatever, that we've made, was that the antibody infusions and provide long-term defense for the HIV-like infection. So are these those antibodies that you were talking about, where they're kind of giving these super antibodies to the monkeys, and it's kind of acting like an extended dosage for the medicines they currently use to kind of keep it somewhat under control? So it's reducing your daily regimen or something?
Well, think about it like if you got bitten by a rabid bat. Sure, you'd get a vaccine for rabies at the time, but they would also give you an infusion of anti-rabies antibodies, because it would take too long for your immune system to figure out how to fight the virus. The virus would already be settled by the time your body figured it out. So it's kind of a shortcut. And so that's kind of what we're looking at now with HIV, is that these awesome proteins, we haven't figured out how to make them via vaccination yet, because evolution and the evolution of your antibodies is a random process, and that's something that creationists just can't deal with. But it's random, and so what we're asking in a vaccine model in this case It's called evolutionary contingency. If you rolled back, the tape of time and played it over again, would you still get humans at the end? Well, in this case, we're giving everybody the exact same vaccine, and we're asking the same protein to evolve in millions of people. And that's not how evolution works. It's randomness. So that's really hard. So we're saying, let's take a shortcut and just give people the protein. Like, they can't make it, but we can make it in plant cells. We can make it in bioreactors, and we can inject it into people. So I will say this. We have a very cheap and effective way of stopping the transmission of HIV. It's called condoms.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the Catholic Church does not approve of that.
They work, and look, we give the Catholic Church shit, but people just don't wear them. Okay, so even in the absence of Catholics, people just won't wear them. And some people are at risk of getting HIV and really aren't in a position to be telling their partner, put on a condom. There are commercial sex workers. There are people in uneven domestic partnerships and such, where they need other options to protect themselves. So I think for most of the people out there, wear a condom, you're fine. But to give other people other options, one thing they've tried is giving people antiretroviral drugs before they actually get infected with the virus. And that stops it. That stops the virus. So let's say in the lab, if I accidentally stab myself with a pipette full of virus, I would go on the drugs immediately, and that could stop infection. So we've tried that in people so you'll know it as PrEP. Some people take antiretroviral drugs every day and help them not be infected. So with these antibodies, it's not a drug. It is an antibody protein. It's a biological protein that hopefully you could be injected with, let's say, every 4 months, every 6 months, that sort of thing, that could hopefully stop the transmission of HIV. And
at
so
least slow it down. It'll slow it down maybe a little.
No, it won't slow it down. It won't slow it down. So what they always don't tell you in these, we found this super awesome antibody papers, is that antibody evolved in an environment. So the virus was evolving, and there were other antibodies evolving, and ultimately the virus escaped that antibody. Now, it's super awesome that antibody can stop 99.99999% of HIVs, but in that patient, it did it. That is the power of HIV. That's what it does. So you could still be infected with HIV and exposed, even though you had this antibody in your system, and it wouldn't necessarily slow down the virus at all. All it is decreasing the chances, hopefully, and decreasing the odds. And I know they've got it going into people right now. So before, the paper you guys were talking about was in a non-human primate model, and it's absolutely, I know they're enrolling people right now for human trials. And that would be great in places like Africa, where they actually prefer the, what's it called, Depo-Provera shot for birth control, as opposed to taking pills every day. So you go into the physician's office, you get your birth control shot, you get your antibody shot, you're on your way. So that could be fantastic in the absence of an HIV vaccine.
Yeah, and I think that's somewhat what we need. We look at our country, and we're a first world country, and we look at Africa, and many places in Africa are a third world country, if you want to call it that. There's, I guess I don't know the proper terminology. It's kind of late, but
developing is third world countries, is a developing world, developing economy.
Yeah, and so I guess if I look at the larger picture of things, and the work you do is extremely important, because what do viruses and things like that do to developing countries? They tear them apart, and they prevent growth, and they prevent all sorts of different things that, if we could stop some of the baser level, and I always think of Maslow's pyramid, and I say that all the time, but Maslow's pyramid, to a point, if you look at it, it proves itself true almost every fucking time. And at that base level, if we can get people out of what they're at and into, you know, some of these vaccinations and give them a better quality of life, it'll allow them to produce more. It'll allow them to have happier lives. And eventually, hopefully, we'll be able to pull some of these developing countries out of the, you know, middle century and kind of a little bit closer to our time. So I guess if you kind of look at who's running for president, you know, I mean, for fuck's sake, the Republican nomination is going to be Donald Trump. And to me, that almost feels like we just decided we're going to go back to, you know, the 1900s and the Rockefeller era.
Yeah. We're just talking about the job market and the applicability of, for example, my skill set outside of what I do. Like, it's just not useful and not applicable outside of what I do. So if certain people get the nomination, I can walk across the street to the McDonald's and put in my application now and get a head start.
Well, maybe you'll get $15 an hour. I mean, you know, there's an article, and I know this is kind of off topic, but there is an article that the McDonald's, some of the owners of the actual corporation versus the franchises actually instituted a higher wage, and they're actually seeing a reduction in employee sickness and more attentiveness, and they're seeing their employees do better. And, well, holy shit, you know, I mean, no shit. You pay somebody a little bit more than, you know, minimum wage, and you get better employees. Now, just imagine if we could bump that up a little bit more for some of these people, you'd probably even get better employees.
Or how about this? Maybe we change the way that we structure our society, and so that the scientists, the doctors, the researchers, the innovators, the creative minds that are going to getting their higher education, that gets a financial priority versus entertainment and this basically the celebration of ignorance known as the Kardashians.
You're talking about socialism now. Damn it, man. I mean, for fuck's sake. I mean, where's their capitalistic American, you know, make America great again spirit?
I don't know, man. Once that cheeseburger hits $100 from all that pay range, I don't know if we can handle it anymore.
True.
Anyway, so it was a pleasure having you on, Abbie. Thank you so much for joining us and talking about HIV vaccine.
It's great, anytime.
And it seems like the time goes by so fast. Like, we should just try and fit this in once a month. That would be awesome. We just have like a monthly update, even if it's only for 15 minutes. Do a monthly update on Abbie's vaccine. You know, you could give us a little bit more information every time.
I tell you what, I've got some really cool stuff coming. So scientists, especially in academia, we share our research because you want people to build upon what you've done. You don't want to have a finding that everybody just ignores. So you're really open about what you do and how you did it. But that being said, you don't do that till after you've published. So we're like secret covetous, and then we've published, and we're like, have what you want. So I've got some really cool stuff in the pipeline. One paper in particular, I'm calling Blue Steel. Yeah. So yeah, you know what that means. So hopefully in the future I can be on and I can tell you all about Blue Steel. Okay, so the other cliche, the cliche in HIV research is, oh, we found a new kink in its armor, we found a new weak spot. Another scientist press release cliche, scientists were surprised. I was surprised. I was actually really surprised at these findings. So, yes, I would love to come on and talk about that.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Abbie, for joining the show tonight. We do want to let you go, respect your time, and we really do enjoy having you on. It's always informational, and we get to talk about evolution and vaccines, two of my favorite subjects. So,
well, thanks for having me, guys. I love it.
Well, thank you. So, everybody listening, make sure you stick around because we're going to be back with more Cellar Door Skeptics right after this quick commercial break, and maybe Hannah flossing his teeth a little bit. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hello, I'm Miss B. Haven.
I'm Demanda Wright.
And we're
promoting secular feminism. And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Do you know where Saskatchewan is? Probably not. It's in Canada. If you do, you might know a city named Regina. In Regina, there's a studio. And in that studio, there are, at least once a month, a bunch of skeptical atheist geeks and goofballs who get together to do a podcast. We are the Brainstorm Crew, and we're trying to help spread a bit of reason and critical thinking while still having fun. Never taking things too seriously, but still not accepting everything we're told. We go through different topics, exploring them in depth, and often disagreeing. We try to stick to provable facts, and we never trust in myth. That's why we say we're woo-free since 2013. You can find us us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Spreaker under Brainstorm, or check out our website, brainstormblog.net. I can't promise you'll always agree with us, but I can promise you'll have fun listening.
Hey, this is Keith.
And this is Jen, and we're from Not Another Atheist Podcast.
You're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Join the revolution.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. That was amazing. We just had a wonderful time, Chris, talking with Abbie about vaccinations, HIV, and the usual scientific mumble jumble. And the best part of that is, because she's been on our show before and because we've talked with her many different times, it just feels comfortable. It's just a comfortable feeling to have her on the show, to be able to have a conversation with her when normally, a lot of the people we're just getting to know. And it just kind of feels like she's almost a regular. Sometimes I just wish she would just join the show permanently and provide the scientific aspect to it,
Oh, she's so well versed. She's so smart as far as any of the topics that she, like she said, she's got a very, very specific area of expertise that if she ever got knocked out of that area, she wouldn't really be able to make any money or something like that. So, she's very, very good at what she does, and that's why we love it. That having her on the show and everything, she does such a great job explaining herself in a way that we can all understand. And I learn something from. I don't learn everything every time. I learn something every time, and it's just a great experience. That is what I want my science segments to be like. But I turn out to be like reading a textbook or something, just plain boring deaf kid in the podcast.
Yeah, and because we had to record her separate tonight, we record all our segments separate, but usually we do kind of like a marathon. We record the whole episode, and I go back through and edit it. But because she had such a tight schedule with the holidays and stuff like that, we had to pre-record her. So right now, if it sounds a little bit different, we apologize, but we don't at the same time because Hannah has actually gotten a new mic. So he's not on his old shitty USB mic. We're actually able to record and edit in a whole different way now. Thank you to all those Patreons that sponsor us and those that share the show, because Hannah has upgraded his mic, folks. He officially doesn't sound like garbage trailer trash anymore.
Oh, come on. You're isolating this very small group of Trump supporters. We can't be hitting people like that. No, this new mic's awesome. I'm going to find out how awesome it sounds when I like a person obsessed with vanity that I listen to myself again when we broadcast and publish, because apparently I can't get enough of listening to myself talk as most people can. I don't know if you still listen to our shows at all or not. Do you like listening to yourself? I love it. I can't not. Is it natural, you think? Is it normal that you like your own voice and the way you sound that good?
I don't know. I don't know. You obviously do. You're obviously a sociopath in that aspect.
It could be. Well, it's important to have a good sense of self-esteem, maybe.
Maybe. But speaking of self-esteem, we were going to have a socialism segment on here because we wanted to actually interview somebody that doesn't just fit kind of where the two of us fit into that middle to the left spectrum of socialism. We wanted to actually have a conversation with somebody that's like full-on socialist.
Full bore.
And maybe even a Marxist. We don't know. Which is different than a socialist. We will distinguish the difference, and we won't go into it tonight. Unfortunately, Larios is not able to join us tonight. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll be able to do a full segment on socialism, because we're very interested to see what the other extreme outside of libertarianism is. And for those of you that are listening, if you go back, I don't know, probably about 3 months, we did a segment with Justin Hale on libertarianism. And I won't say we agreed with them, but we did do a segment on libertarianism with them. So
we nitpicked a little bit. I think that'd be probably the best way to describe it. We nitpicked.
We
said, "What, hey, dude? That sounds kind of." That was pretty much my feeling to the most of it. You guys, because you two had previously engaged on a few of these things.
We had.
So you had some background to the story. I was just playing catch up.
Yeah. So we decided to sub this segment for something called Ghost Stories, Visits from the Deceased. After a loved one dies, most people see ghosts. And then I got to go, what? Is that true, Chris? I mean, come on. Seriously, what the fuck?
It's a weird thing to see from the Scientific American. I was not expecting this. Once again, another Reddit find. But it's something that I was not expecting to see coming from Scientific American. And so I read a little bit. Guess what? Your brain's very, very strong. It has an incredible ability for hallucinations. Most of the reasons why a lot of people try to chase that pharmaceutical pharmacopoeia high. I mean, your brain can create unbelievable stretches of hallucinations. And so that's basically the direction that this article takes. It's the hallucinations, the dreams. These are things that are not uncommon for people who experience what I would call a traumatic event. Someone passes away, someone dies, something along those lines. That's a huge deal. My mother, without a question, has told me that this has happened multiple times with her parents when they passed away. So I have not quite firsthand, but someone in my direct family. I know my mom doesn't have any kind of really weird pseudo beliefs, and she doesn't believe in like ghosts coming down and talking to you. But she has said that when her father and her mother passed away, she had dreams that were so vivid that she talked with them, things like that. Yeah, I have never experienced this. I've never really, I guess, had any kind of ghosty feeling. I know you used to chase ghosts, which is insane.
I did not chase ghosts,
Okay,
Hannah.
no.
I observed. I went ghost observing.
Yeah, you didn't hunt them or chase them. You observed
You went ghost
them.
absorbing. That's how that works.
You social justice warrior, get ghost hunting. Anyways, you had some of that ghost stuff in your past. I mean, where are you taking this?
Yeah. So with the Scientific America, you introduced the topic, and I kind of said, I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe we should do this. I don't know. So I did a little bit of homework on this, and basically they talk about how the dead can stay with us, and they don't talk about how the dead actually physically stay with us. Which is what when the first time I saw this, I was like, fuck this shit. There's no way we're going to do this segment because I'm sorry, I don't believe ghosts stay with us. And yeah, maybe I used to ghost observe, fine, whatever, but I don't anymore, and I think it's a bunch of BS. But as I got into the article, they basically made it clear that there's something called grief hallucinations, and it's a normal reaction from bereavement. And that basically it kind of talks about how when people die and all the different things that society tends to associate hallucinations not with stress, but with drugs or mental illness. And that this article makes a very, I'm going to say a very softball case for hallucinations and what's common. And they basically say this. They say one study by the researcher Gimberly at University of Gothenburg, which, again, they all sound like made-up places, but they're not.
I'm pretty sure this is all German. It's Agneta
it is.
at the University of Gothenburg.
Yeah, but they sound like bullshit. But anyway, they...
don't be geographically ignorant, man.
But, they talk about, 80% of elderly people experience hallucinations associated with their dead partner 1 month after bereavement. And as if their perception had yet to catch up with the fact that somebody has passed on. And to me, it almost feels logical. I almost think that, yeah, you know what, that's probably right. Because, how often did I see dead people after they died? And it's kind of like that movie, Sixth Sense, right? I mean, they saw dead people, I see dead people.
Yeah.
That's kind of
Joe Osment.
Yeah. But for instance, my grandmother was very religious. Her and I did not get along. She was nice for the most part, but her and I just did not see eye to eye. And she was always a thorn in my fucking side as a kid. I mean, she used to be the grandmother that would come by and be like, you don't have enough vegetables on your plate? Boom, here you go.
Man.
Boom, here you go. Oh, you're not eating that? Boom, here you go. Oh, you need to try fish? Boom, here you go. That's the type of woman she was. And when she passed away, and I had gone to her funeral, the whole fucking funeral was literally basically like a, hey, you need to be saved. Hey, you need to do this. And it's like, oh, hold on a second. Why the fuck do I need to be saved? But the whole funeral felt like it was projecting on all the atheists and secular people who don't go to church in here. They need to be saved. And afterwards, I had some pretty fucking vivid nightmares. I'll be honest with you. I had this nightmare, and I'll tell you about this, where basically I was sitting at the dinner table with all my family, and I was sitting there, and we were talking about, I don't know, God only knows what.
And you can still remember this thing? Holy crap.
Yes, and I do, because it was that vivid. And you can ask my wife, I woke up in sweats. But what happened was, all of a sudden at the table, my grandmother shows up. And you're like, well, I thought she was dead. Where the hell did she come from, Where is she? And all of a sudden she shows up. And she's at the dinner table, and we're all talking, and we're all sitting there, and all of a sudden she turns into this like skeleton thing and like melts away and comes and talks to me and is like, "You need Jesus," and I'm like, "Oh shit! What the fuck is this? What is? Man. Oh man, and she turned into the skeleton. It was just this big ordeal, and I remember waking up in a sweat, going, and yes, that was me snapping, but I woke up in a sweat, going, "What the fuck?"
That's pretty hardcore.
Oh my god, I don't even understand. I don't even understand this. And it was just, and yeah, to this day, I remember that dream. And I actually had other dreams about her over the next couple of months. So, Chris, is that part of the reason why you picked this article?
Kind of.
Because I had hallucinations about my grandma.
Yes, no, I went through your diary while you were in the bathroom last time. No, when I hear these stories, like, I love the complexity and the ability of the brain to simulate, to really do some amazing things. And this is a great example of that. These are things that, like, you always hear that saying, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Well, being able to see and understand when a hallucination is happening, through brain scans and all that stuff, this is stuff that we're seeing now. We're able to test it. We're able to statistically analyze this information. And we're finding out the brain is this incredibly great simulation software. So basically, from the vision, we don't see exactly what we see. We see like these weird snapshots, and the brain kind of formulates all of the light and stuff in your head. So that's how you get the image that you see. The brain's always doing all kinds of this anti-aliasing stuff. And this is a great example of the brain doing something that people were like, that's supernatural. Well, here's a case where we're pretty sure, 80% of people have experienced something like this. This is a pretty like a sufficient, pretty strong indicator that there's something happening here. Obviously, more information, more studying would have to happen. But this is a good explanation for, oh man, I saw the light. I almost died, and I saw the afterlife. I saw that moment when you pass over into the beyond. I saw grandma. I saw grandpa. Well, guess what? Your brain can create bears jumping from the sky when you're on mushrooms. Anything along those lines, like there's no difference to me from like a major stressful event or pharmaceuticals or organic compounds causing you to get high. Any of that kind of stuff. It's your brain changing what you see, hear, think, feel. And this is just, to me, one more notch. Like, okay, the ghost story stuff, or like you said, grandma turning into a skeleton at the dinner table. That's another notch off the list of, okay, the God of the Gaps has just got a little bit smaller. We have we're getting to a better understanding of why the brain's doing what it's doing, and that's helping explain some of these supernatural life after death. And it's a German study. I would love to see Americans doing this more, but I have a gut feeling they wouldn't be able to get funding here because we're so damn Christian.
They would probably assume that it had to do quite a bit with the Christian aspect. They would probably just give this to God and be like, yeah, God's causing this because of this, and that. And you're like,
who would fund it? Like, I don't see how you would get funding for a test or for a series of experiments like this. In Europe, there's a lot. It's weird. There's some spots that are super religious, just like the United States, but there's lulls in that area where they can get some good science done.
Yeah,
and Germany's pretty good at that.
Yep. And some of the other parts of the article, they talk about this. They said there are hints of these types of hallucinations might occur in other cultures, and anthropologists have told us a great deal about how the ceremonies, beliefs, and social rituals of death differ greatly across the world, but we do have certain clues to these different approaches, and they are affected by how people experience the dead after they're gone. And I think that's telling, right, Chris? I think that's the big telling thing right there, is that there's a similarity in how people are seen in ghosts, and people see those things. And you got to think there is traumatic experience. For instance, there was a lady that was in one of the groups that we're in, and she made this post about how her son passed away randomly last week. She didn't go into details. He was 12 years old, but he's dead. And she talks about how she misses him and how she can see him, how she can, almost hear his voice. And that's incredibly sad to me. I'll be honest with you. I have a hard time reading that personally without crying. But one of the big things in that she's doing, right? One of the big things that she's doing, she could be having grief hallucinations. And that would make sense, wouldn't it? We would be back to the scientific side that, hallucinations and these things are another coping mechanism that our bodies have evolved to do that will allow us to experience loss without wanting to basically blow our fucking brains out.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, there's a variety of reasons why. And it could be a side effect, just the fact that our brains are incredibly complex and we had a series of steps throughout the evolutionary process. And these are interesting side effects or possible mutations that in the future could potentially give us a little bit more of an understanding as to, what the brain can do. It could be, we could evolve away from this. Not really needing that extra brain power or the solution or the simulation software or whatever. Whenever I think of they talk about the other cultures and stuff, one of the groups, the ayahuasca tribes, I don't know if you're familiar with that at all.
Oh yes,
but that's what they do. I mean, they go. It's a very spiritual. It's very controlled. It's very traditional. They have their whole rites, the processes, and it's what it. The end result is to induce a hallucination, and a lot of times those come in a variety of different forms. Each person's experience is completely different. Some people are trying to kick opiates. Some people are trying to see the father that passed away, and there's ways that some people can instill and kind of aim. Some people can dream, especially the way they want to dream. Lucid dreaming, I believe it is. Mm-hmm. And they can, with some of this ayahuasca stuff, they can kind of aim their hallucination to go where they want it to go. They want to see their dead relatives or something. All of this kind of stuff, it's just more evidence to me of a scientific explanation over a supernatural or religious explanation. And that's really where I am. This isn't oh, we got you. Check. You're caught. There's no supernatural. This is just more evidence. It's what we always cite. More evidence as to, hey, this is more evidence for why we think the way we do, why we dismiss the ghostly apparitions. And this is just another piece of... And the Scientific American isn't, some bullshit BuzzFeed article. This is a decent... They have their sources in here so you can read some of the sources from the research. It's pretty cool stuff. I recommend checking it out and obviously post your thoughts and if you think we're full of shit or not.
Yeah, make sure you send an email to cellardoorskeptics@gmail.com because Hannah checks the email so often, and we'll make sure he gets your
I just have to check my Pornhub subscription when it comes in, I guess.
So anyway, we're going to close the segment out, and we'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics, and we'll be talking about if there's a new Darwinism. And yes, I'm going to leave you with that. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
This is Ishmael Brown, the HNIC from the Angry Black Rant podcast, and you're listening to the Cellar Door Skeptics.
I'm Dustin.
And I'm Wesley.
We host the Atheist Nomads podcast.
We're godless geeks who take a skeptical look at
politics, religion, science, technology, and history.
We also interview leaders in the atheist, skeptic, and humanist community.
Check us out at atheistnomads.com.
That's atheistnomads.com.
This is Trav Mamone, host of the By Any Means podcast, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics. Prepare for the revolution. We have cookies.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you so much for sticking around through those first couple of seconds. We talked about HIV vaccinations, HIV science shit. We talked about hallucinations of the dead. If you missed that one, go back and listen to Chris's crazy story about his dead grandma haunting his ass.
You Chris, not me, Chris.
me, Christopher here. But we found an interesting article that we wanted to we wanted to touch on here. One that kind of, I think this hits home a little bit more. We both like the evolutionary construct. We like the evolutionary discussion.
We understand it pretty well.
We do. And the one thing that we strive for is how do we dive deeper, right? How do we bring more science segments that will inspire you to go do research that, even more in depth than what we've done. And this article came up, one called Jerry England, the Man Who May One Up Darwin. And I sat there and said, hold on, I'm gonna read this shit because how do you one up Darwin? I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. But somehow he thinks he's gonna one up Darwin, and so the article starts out where it kind of talks about a sunny afternoon, blah 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 blah, and you're like, okay, hold on, this almost feels like a little bit of fluff. But the gentleman's name who was written about is called Jeremy England. He's 33. He's got a PhD and he's an assistant professor at MIT.
Big names. There's a lot of stuff happening there. PhD, MIT. You don't get an MIT halfway. So This guy, he's got his science and he's got his credentials. So what's he going to do with them? Are we going to be seeing some Stephen Jay Gould stuff here or what?
Well, I don't know. Who the fuck's Stephen Jay Gould?
Oh, that hurts. All right. Well, anyways, continue on.
Anyway, so what he talks about is how that maybe evolution is just a limited type function, and that in reality that there may be a more in-depth physics analysis of how evolution can work on a different level other than cellular. And I think it was a genius, move to play up. It's not been proven out, so this is Chris and I are not going to talk about and say this is something that is for sure going to happen, right? We're just talking about kind of a hypothesis that he needs to pretty much.
He's got a paper that's in peer review, and we haven't. I looked for it. I could not find any results of peer review yet. I couldn't find any agreements or debunks or disagreements or just ripping it apart or anything. So it's still out there in the pending blogosphere, papersphere, Google papers, wherever that stuff goes nowadays. Because I mean, besides the main couple of journals, I don't know where he's trying to get it published, but we'll see. And if we hear, we'll obviously let anybody know.
And so anyway, so the articles that we found basically talks about how he's taking physics and using them to talk about how inanimate objects that are made up of basically carbon atoms could actually be life. And basically what he's trying to say is that in the end, maybe life cannot just be constrained to what we realize or know, that maybe this desk has some sort of a life value to it. Not in the same consciousness level that us humans have, but in the aspect of where does the technology take us? And basically one of the analogies that he uses is he says, think about this. If you had an opera singer with a crystal glass in her hand, right? The higher the pitch, the more likely the glass is going to break. But if we did things in a different medium, right, and we were able to test this differently, we would actually be able to see the glass, the atoms in the glasses, in the crystal, change to the point where it would start to become more resistant to the higher notes. Therefore, it would allow itself to do it. But it has to happen through some sort of a way that would allow it to be the next step or a different rung, I guess if you want to call it, in evolutionary understanding. And so he published this paper that he's working on getting peer-reviewed, like Chris said, and I don't know how far across he can actually get this, peer-reviewed, because there's got to be a lot of information that's got to go into this. But he basically talks about a theoretical process that would prove life would be different.
Basically what he's doing is he's taking the ideas of Darwin's theory, and he's putting them not to simple-celled organisms or single-celled organisms, but he's actually going down even further. So it'd be that the atomic particles themselves are behaving based on a simple set of rules using statistics and physics, that they're behaving in such a way that would make them adaptive. And that's what you were mentioning for the analogy for the glass, is that the glass itself, the crystal structure, the atomic structure, not the cellular structure. The cellular is obviously, lots of atoms already just in that single-celled structure. But we're going down to the atomic structure and solids and things that are considered non-organic and non-alive. Well, those atoms and those particulates, those would behave in some way of an organic way. They would adapt to an environment. So the glass atoms themselves would adapt to that high-frequency noise vibration thing over time, and it would give it a little bit better resistance to breaking when just a glass instantly exposed to it that had not been given that long time of evolution, according to a physics-based idea of evolution, smaller than the cells, that would keep the glass from breaking. That's kind of his idea. He's describing something radically different. Is basically the idea. He's using thermodynamics, and we can get a little bit into that in a moment. But it's statistics, and he's using very good science, and he's getting a bit speculative. So I like the idea, I like the philosophy behind it. But where he's going with the actual science, I'm still a little sketchy, because he's run some simulations and the ideas are cool, but I'm having a hard time seeing how he's actually going to prove out his hypothesis, as you said.
Yes, and that's the big thing here, right? The big discussion point is that second law of thermodynamics. And there's this article quotes an influence from 1944 called "What is Life?" The eminent quantum physicist Erwin Schrödinger argued that this is what living things must do. A plant, for example, absorbs extremely energetic sunlight, uses it to build sugars, and ejects infrared light, a much less concentrated form of energy. The overall entropy, I don't know how to say that shit, entropy of the universe increases during photosynthesis as the sunlight dissipates, even as the plant prevents itself from decaying by maintaining an orderly internal structure. So he's saying life doesn't violate the second law of thermodynamics, but until recently we were not able to understand or explain why it should arise in the first place. And I think that's what's interesting about these articles that we're going to link in the description here, is that he's talking about how we can find the origins of life without having to appeal to a creator, basically. How we can find the origins of life and how inorganic things can come from non-organic things, right? How inanimate objects can come from, or single-cell organisms can come from, turn into multi-celled organisms. And I think it's interesting because it shows that evolution doesn't just happen on one level, but it moves to that baser level, that atomic level, that even more complex level that we don't see. And that's what's amazing about this, is that when we see this, if evolution is true, which we personally understand it to be true, if you look at it at an atomic level and can apply it to the physics of atoms, you can see evolution in just a more, fourth dimensional complex.
Well, we'd be seeing a better explanation of how life begins, really, because that would give us the idea. We were talking about this before the show started. It's like, what is life? What's the definition of life? When does it start? How does it start? What is it? Is it even distinctive from physical reality and matter itself? Is life simply the side effect of more and more complexity? The idea of the entropy that we're talking about, for anybody that's not familiar with it, I'll just go through a quick little thing. Entropy, basically, in the second law of thermodynamics, in the first law, everything has to be equal. Any energy put out has to be exactly equal to the energy put in. In the second law, it's not perfectly equal. There's always a tiny, tiny little bit, usually notated as S, that you lose. You can never gain back. That's energy that it's not 100% efficient. You cannot have a perfectly, a perpetual motion machine that never, a perfect energy in, perfect energy out. There's always a little bit of loss, usually in the form of heat. But the universe itself is always increasing in entropy. It never decreases in entropy. Always just a tiny bit. More efficient a cycle, the less waste energy is put out. But there's always a little bit of it. And there's theories and ways. There's things called the Carnot cycle and stuff. In engineering, it's important that entropy is pretty well understood. And this guy is really, really, really homing in on the idea that increased complexity, like people say that the evolution from atomic structure to the cellular structure is, it's increasing complexity. Well, entropy says that everything should be getting less and less structured. It should be, wasteful. We should be losing energy. We should be losing structure and organization. And that's where this could help us explain that increase in complexity, which would be like going from non-life to life, which most people see as an increase in complexity. This could help us explain that, and so essentially knock off a small little tool that a lot of people use for apologetics and for the supernatural and stuff. This is cool stuff on the fringe, and it's bending the line right now between philosophy and statistics and data and experiments. This really it is. Right now, it's kind of like just an organizational lens. It's a fabulous idea, but right or wrong, it's going to be very much worth the investigation, is what Quantum Magazine organization says. It's just the understanding of quantum, or of the theory of entropy in thermodynamics is what he's using. And there's some cool images for like computer simulation that he runs. Basically, a bunch of unstructured atoms and atomic materials. When he subjects these to a certain amount of energy, these particles start to create bonds. Over time, those bonds increase, so you're increasing in complexity. It's one of the really simple images that you can see. So I recommend checking that out to help you understand what's happening here a little bit. But you're going to have to look up some thermodynamics to really understand what's going on here.
It is. It's not like it's an uncomplex, conversation. And they talk about the greater structural organization, and it's basically another means to drive systems to allow it to dissipate energy. And they use this example. They say basically a plant is much better at capturing and routing solar energy through itself than an unstructured heap of carbon atoms. So England argues that under certain conditions, matter will spontaneously self-organize. This tendency could account for the internal order of living things and of many inanimate structures as well. So, for instance, snowflakes, sand dunes. Those are two examples that, he throws out there that kind of says, hey, look, in this particle-driven society or particle-driven world we live in, if you look at it, if we took an evolutionary construct and expanded it to an atom level, a mononuclear level, we would see the same thing happening, just in molecule form. And if you look at the difference between microevolution and macroevolution, right, what happens is you have your micro starts and it grows and grows and grows, and eventually it's macroevolution. Well, in logic, if that logic holds true, it's the exact same thing in this instance. The difference is it starts with an atom level and works its way up to a cellular level. And it makes complete sense if it proves out to be true.
Well, we talked about on a show not too long ago, the game of life, and it was a really cool idea that kind of what I was suspecting is exactly what this guy is proposing. It's the game of life is basically a game with a very small set of rules, and you can go back and listen to our episode. I don't remember exactly what episode it was, but it's a small environment, very strict rules, and just with a few rules and increasing the size of the environment, you get more and more organic, more complex, more interesting structures. Well, if you think about all of the rules of physics, all of the chaos, all of the different kinds of atomic particles, I mean, the Standard Model alone is incredibly complex. It's built big, unwieldy monster, and it keeps getting bigger every time we use the Large Hadron Collider and increase its energy that it's able to work at. What we're getting is like all of that complexity. Now imagine a game with all of the rules of physics, all of Newton's laws, all of Einstein's rules, and even at the small level, we're talking quantum. All of those different rules and settings are what this guy, Jeremy England, is running in his simulation, which is like this super complex game of life. And so why would we not expect the rules and laws of physics to kind of act in an organic manner? It's already incredibly complex just describing the system itself. So this is awesome. I love this stuff, and I would love to see if this idea works, because one warning I wanted to give out before the Ozzy article, it's Ozzy, O-Z-Y, is the name of the site that we're going to link. It gets really, really spiritual.
It does.
I was like, whoa, where did that come from? So just a heads up that he's Jewish, and he kind of found his Jewish heritage and stuff through it that his parents didn't really. So it's one of the things that he's kind of mixed into life, and it makes the article a little bit like eye-rolly is probably my best way to describe it when you're going through it, but it's still really cool stuff. The other article it's from Quantum magazine that I mentioned. That one keeps the science. That keeps it dirty. It doesn't get too much into the philosophical or supernatural religious stuff.
Yeah. And I think it's important that we're not going to go into the philosophical or religious aspects of it tonight. We don't want to do that.
Well, but they know our perspectives. We're not going to.
We're not going to say anything new.
We disagree with that part, but his science is cool, so why not?
Yep. And I think it's an interesting idea. And as we leave the segment, there was a quote from the Quanta magazine article that we did, and it says, "People often get stuck in thinking about individual problems. They're thinking more broadly if they think more broadly, that's where scientific breakthroughs are made." And that's what we're hoping, is this is a scientific breakthrough. We can see the evolutionary scale get moved to an atomic level, and we can feel even more confident that evolution is part of the building blocks of life.
And God is in an even smaller gap than before.
Yeah, he's a non-existent gap. Make sure you stick around for more Cellar Door Skeptics. When we come back from this quick break, we're going to talk about Gorilla Gate as we end the show tonight. Make sure you stick around. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hey guys, this is Wyatt Mathers from the Atheist Avengers podcast. You are listening to the Cellar Door Skeptics. Prepare for the revolution.
Hi, this is Trav Mamone of the By Any Means podcast. Join me every week as I talk to activists, bloggers, and podcasters about the intersections between social justice and humanism. go to www.byanymeans.com, that's by spelled B-I, to listen to the podcast and read my blog. Besides, aren't we all a little bi-curious?
This is Deborah McTaggart from Beyond the Trailer Park, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to the last segment for Cellar Door Skeptics tonight. We've had a great time talking about science with Abbie, about HIV vaccines, the dead, raising the dead, maybe? No, not raising the dead. Hallucinations. And we talked a little bit about how maybe there's a new theory that comes in for Darwinism.
Science,
it was a lot of science. It was fun. I enjoyed this episode, and it was science I can get into, science I can believe in, science I enjoy.
That sounds like a political campaign slogan. Science you can believe in, change you can hope for.
Change you can hope for. Yeah, a little bit there. But, you know, so as we close the show out, we thought we'd do something called Gorilla Gate. Gorilla Gate. And if you don't know what's been going on, there was a child that fell into the gorilla pit. And I have a different, unique perspective, and it's not that mine's any different than other people's, but I thought it would be a good topic to have a conversation with, because Hannah and I may not agree on this one, and I'm kind of an asshole, and I'll be kind of an asshole in this last segment just because I'm very passionate about it. But I wanted to open up reading a little bit of a story that's going to kind of kick off the discussion here. I won't mention the name, but the links will be in the description. This individual posted this. When I was about 7 or 8, I was standing in the doorway to the kitchen of our apartment in Germany. I was looking at my little sister, Blank, who was about 2, in her high chair across the room, next to the window. My mom was cooking at the stove on the other end of that same window. About that time, it registered in my mind that Kate had undone her seatbelt, and she was standing up in her high chair, and she was reaching toward the window. She slipped and fell forward, brushing the screen with her hand and popping it out. I was 10 feet away, and it happened so fast I couldn't get there in time. She was going to be headed out the window first for a 7-story drop onto the concrete before my mom reached over, grabbed her by the back of the shirt, and hauled her in. 6 inches. 6 inches. That's the distance between my mom, the hero, and my mom, the irresponsible parent, who had more kids than she could keep up with. If she had been 6 inches further away from that window, the story would be drastically different, with a completely different ending. It happened so fast at first I wanted to think it was magic. 1 blink of an eye and she was sitting down, 2 blinks and she was nearly airborne. But for some reason, this story pops into my brain today. How about we stop talking about people like they have to either be heroes or the worst people ever? Let's assign less blame and mitigate more harm as humans. And I think that story plays into the whole thing that happened at the zoo. And we could talk about whether the parents were religious, right? We could talk about whether they had safe practices with their children, whether the child should have been holding on to the back pants of a lady taking pictures at a zoo. We could talk about whether zoos are even fucking ethical, for Christ's sake. We could talk about whether the enclosures were safe enough for children to not fall into or for animals to leap out. We could talk about all those things, but if we don't stop and actually look at what's going on, if we don't actually stop and look at how parenting happens, we're not going to be any better or any worse than those Christians that go and, hey, look, they left Christianity because they didn't do enough damn research, you know? Oh, they just didn't understand that Jesus really loves them, and if they read that Bible a little bit different, they'd understood.
Oh, man, we're getting some of that crazy Bible stories, vocals back we used to have a long time ago. No, this is a very complex problem. That's one of the things that we do online. We do these black and white stories. As an atheist and as a scientific skeptic and a lot of other things, basically the things that we say are great that we all talk about on the internet, our clubs, all of our groups. We always say that, be skeptical, try to figure out the whole situation. It's always gray. There's no, binary 0 and 1s. I find that I see people that are normally rational and skeptical just jumping on bandwagons for this story. I didn't want to post about it. I didn't really want to talk about it. It seems like one of those, media stories that But when we talked about, just prepping for the show or whatever, you ran some ideas and some thoughts out and caught me off guard. And, I kind of agree with some of the things that you have to say about that. So you changed my idea because I hadn't thought about it yet, so to speak, for this story. But this is, there isn't just one thing. Like, it's the woman's fault. It's the zoo's fault. Don't shoot the gorillas. Like, that answer doesn't work. Those really simple answers, the really, really easy answers rarely are the right ones. That's usually the Occam's razor on this kind of situation. It's just not going to work. So what are you thinking? Is like, are you against the idea that the parents are the main culprits here? Are you against the idea that's the big thing that bugs you about this story? Is people are saying it's mom's fault. It's her fault. That's kind of what that story you just put out there is. Mom didn't have anything. She wasn't being a bad parent. She just kind of got caught just being stretched out and doing everything she could and almost missed.
Yeah. And if some of me says that this could happen to anybody, right? Yeah. I mean, this isn't just a normal thing. And I could tell a story. I'll tell a story in a minute about my parents. And supposedly my mom listens to this, so I'm sure I'll get a phone call this week about this instance. But if we look
Your mom
at it,
listens to the show.
I guess she told me after last episode she did. But if we look at the situation and we look at what's going on and what's happening in this scenario. So this lady has her child, and she's taking some pictures, and this little child keeps telling her, "Hey, I want to go in and play with the monkeys. I want to go play with the monkeys." And then all of a sudden, the kid's in the monkey pit, right? Somehow she's a bad parent for this. Somehow because she took her visuals off of this child for a couple of seconds, she's the bad parent. Somehow this cage isn't designed to hold an animal that Honestly, we probably shouldn't be holding in a fucking captive zoo, for fuck's sake. I'm anti-circus. I'm not 100% anti-zoo, but I'm pretty close. And it's not because of these things. I don't think it's genuinely good for the animals. But that's beside the point. I don't want to get into that topic tonight.
We could hit it a little bit.
No.
Ethics on the zoos. I like the zoos. The only thing I like about the zoos is the animals that are injured. But nobody really goes to the zoo to see a 3-legged polar bear like we were talking about earlier. You know what I mean? So I get it. I love animal rehabilitation. I really, really like the animal reserves. They have these like awesome preserves that the Shrine Circus just sent all of their elephants to now. They're not going to have elephants in the circus anymore. They're sending the elephants to these special places where they can live out their lives. Those are cool things that could be good for some animals that just simply can't survive in nature. But yeah, I kind of feel the same way as you do. The zoo itself is just
Yeah, but we don't want to spend too much time on that because I don't think that's the pure focus, because what's happened in the internet over the last fucking week is that they've turned around and they've made this woman a horrible person.
Yeah.
And they have. And some people have used the religious side of it and said, well, she prayed to God, therefore blah, 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 blah. And I'm saying, fuck off. Stop for a second. You know what? She's religious. That's her natural outlet. Let's let that alone for a second. Let's stop and go, is she really a bad parent? Do we have the right to judge her? When it comes to an instance where we can walk into a house and there's two parents passed out on the couch because they shot enough heroin up to kill an elephant, and the child's sitting there playing in its own feces, or even sitting there playing and watching a TV. In that instance, I think we're pretty safe in saying the parents are incapacitated and that child is under poor supervision. The mother wasn't turning around and drinking a bunch of beer and sitting on the thing going, oh yeah, just honey, go up to the monkey cage. I'm going to sit back here. I don't give a fuck what you do. She's not saying that. That's not what happened. And if it did, where the hell is that story? Yeah. That's not the story that we're getting out of this. We're not getting that. We're getting the fact that she didn't do it appropriately on how we would fucking do it. And we need to stop and look at and say, hey, in reality, is this a harmful thing? Is this what happened? For instance, and here I'm going to tell this story. When I was a child, we lived in Ohio, right? We didn't have a lot of lakes around us. I know Michigan does, but in Ohio, we didn't have a ton of lakes. I learned how to swim at a YMCA. I'll be honest, I wasn't very good at it. we went back up over the summer to visit my relatives. My mom took all of us kids. My cousin was a very good swimmer because, of course, he can go to the fucking lake anytime he goddamn wants to, because they live by a lake. I don't. We go out to the lake. It's a little bit windy, but they don't have the red flags up. While we're out there, all of a sudden, the currents kick up. Next thing you know, me and my cousin are being dragged out. My mom's on the beach. She's sitting there getting a tan. She's sitting there drinking her lemonade. Is it wrong for her to let me go swimming? Should she micromanage every little aspect of my life because I don't know how to swim as well? I gave the illusion I knew how to swim. I was out there in the water swimming. Does that mean that my mom's a horrible parent because of the fact that I went swimming? She didn't know the extent of how bad the waves were that day. I ended up drifting out all the way to the buoy with my cousin. We couldn't swim back. I couldn't fucking figure out how to swim past the current. My cousin couldn't figure out how to drag me back to shore. I mean, we're 10 years fucking old, we're not very old children. My aunt had to dive in, come get us off the buoy. Is my mom a bad parent because for the 30 seconds she turned around to look at her other kid and didn't see me drifting out and not being able to swim against the current? Is she now a bad parent because of that? Think about how many times you or any other parent has stopped and seen other things happen. Life isn't perfect. That's not how it fucking works around here. It doesn't work where there's just some magical fucking fairy that goes, hold on a second, you violated the kid's little distance. You need to get a little bit more up in their shit. That's not how it works.
I think that's the immediate reaction. That's the first thing, like the emotional. How the hell does a kid get away from the parent? How does the child get away? How does mom not pay attention? That's just an immediate knee-jerk reaction. And the other reaction is, how the hell was there not a lid on that box? How was it just like, oh, just a kid just kind of lean over a railing and just fall right down into the gorilla thing? Yeah, I know that people need to be able to see into the gorilla encampment and stuff like that, but that's the situation at hand. Why didn't the zoo have a big enough wall to
was
keep
it
little
tested?
Kids out? And like that happens. Well, that kind of stuff isn't rare. And so Joe Rogan, we talked about it again before we started recording. Joe Rogan talks about people that get this tiger that jumps out of a cage and kills a kid that was throwing pine cones at it. Is it the kid's fault? He's throwing pine cones at a monster? No, it might be because they didn't put a lid on the box for the tiger encampment. How could they not figure that the tiger could get out of that cage? The same kind of situation here is like the zoo is kind of at fault. The parent, it's really tough to be on top of your kids all the time, making sure that everything is good. I would think that the facilities would be safe enough so that you can not stare at your child 100% of the time and be pretty sure they're not going to fall into a predator's cage where they're just going to, pull limbs and arms and stuff off. Like, that seems to be a bit excessive. That would be after thinking about it, after spending a moment and thinking, okay, I'm not going to be pissed off at the parent. What else could have been the case here? And I would say that, the facilities needed to be a little bit better.
Yeah. And that's the thing, at our zoos in Grand Rapids, right, we have bears. And if you go to that exhibit, we do.
They're in the streets, just wandering.
Not in the streets. They don't.
In West Michigan. Holy shit.
All right, hold on. They're not in the streets. I'm sorry. I made that out sound bad. At our zoos, there's a containment area with bears in it, right? In that containment area, there's a huge distance for the bears to get to the people. I mean, they would really have to try really, really hard, and the slopes are very steep. It's not something where they can just all of a sudden pick up and go, oh, yeah, we're able to get in now. We're able to all of a sudden be a part of it. That's not how it works. And so, if you look at how they had that zoo set up, was it given enough thought? Did anybody treat it the same way that, they would treat anything else?
Maybe it was the old design back in the day when it was like, people are going to be smart enough not to lean over the railing. Nowadays, we need a little bit more of a warning sign. We need 87 warning symbols on McDonald's coffee so you don't dump it in your eyes or something ridiculous that. So
no, the difference is if it's not tested, Hannah. If it's not fucking tested, if there's no way to test this, or nobody cares to test this, or nobody looks at it scientifically, right? Like you what do you work in? What is your job? You're a mechanical fucking engineer, right?
Yep.
The zoo should be mechanically engineered to not have people fall in them. And I'm not going to sit here and say that the parents could have paid a little bit more attention, right? I'm not going to say that. But in reality, in a business, what do you look for? You look for the worst scenario and you protect against it, right?
Yep.
That's what you do.
Like all the nets at the sporting events and stuff for the upper balconies. You always used to hear about people falling off that stuff. Now there's nets everywhere. Like if you fall
not
off,
at the Griffins.
You got to make like a running start to get to like the second row off the edge of the balcony. I remember that used to happen at concerts and stuff. Concert halls, not so much, but like outdoor sporting events, there's usually a pretty good net there to catch stuff.
Yeah. And my work, and I work in a warehouse, right? And my work, we have nets behind, some of the racking where other people are working behind. That way, if we knock a skid over, even though we shouldn't, right? If we knock a skid over, it hits the net and it stops it from a skid of 7,000 pounds falling on some poor innocent guy cutting wood, They think about that. And whether they should or not is not the question here. The question is why are we worried about how somebody's parenting? If a fucking 4-year-old or a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old can jump into that pit, we have to look at why are they able to do that? And we can argue about whether we should put gorillas in these small cages to begin with because maybe it makes them more volatile, right? We can argue that. But if we move past that point, we have to look at how did the child get in there and why are we not more concerned with the zoo fixing that so that it can never fucking happen again?
And we shouldn't villainize the parent. Like, yeah, she's probably negligent for a moment, but I would honestly ask any person out there who has had a kid. I'm going to be freshly having my daughter's 8 months old today, so I'm going to be dealing with all this stuff in firsthand very soon. But any parent out there or anybody out there who has a story where they didn't just accidentally go somewhere and their parents lost them and freaked the hell out. I saw it in Chicago when I went on my vacation a few weeks ago. This parent lost her kid. Her kid was just standing by the garbage can talking to another kid, but she had no idea. She's in one of the biggest museums in the city. People freaked out. I wandered off on the beach one day when I was in Lake Michigan. My grandparents lost me, and people running on, going crazy. Some dude was like, "Hey, there's a kid right over there," and then obviously it was me just wandering around. You can't, expect the perfect world, and so, like I said, I wouldn't villainize the mom. Yeah, maybe she was negligent for a moment, but who hasn't been? Who hasn't made a little mistake here and there? And you would just hope the society would be safe enough. And that's where I would put most of the blame on this situation. It's like, yeah, I get it. We have a knee-jerk reaction also to just the violent results that they had to shoot the gorilla. You said, I don't know if you did any research or not, it takes a few minutes for tranquilizer darts or something like that to kick in, which is one of the reasons probably why they use lethal force to save the kid.
Yeah, in one of the articles, and we're going to actually talk about this because this is the last point I think I have to make. I had a story about when I was a kid and I didn't want to leave the store because I wanted something and my parents didn't know how to get me to leave without me throwing a fit, right? So they literally left me sitting the fuck on the floor screaming when I was, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years old.
You sounded horrible.
I probably was a horrible kid. I won't lie, I probably was a horrible kid. But they had to leave me because they didn't know what else to do. I was throwing a fit, I was screaming, I was crying. They didn't know what else to do. They left, walked around the corner, and then, while I sat there. Now, technically speaking, somebody could have ran me over with a fucking cart in the mall, right? Somebody could have grabbed me and ran off, and my parents were far enough away that if somebody had grabbed me, they wouldn't catch me probably before they left the store, right? I could have been kidnapped out of it. Does that make them bad parents because of that? No, that's not how it works. You look at it and you go, okay, we have to do certain things sometimes with children because sometimes they are outside the norm. But the bigger thing is when I did the research, when I looked at some of the articles, and we'll link these fuckers in the description, it takes 5 minutes, roughly, 3 to 5 minutes to put a gorilla down of that size, right? So
with a
tranquilizer dart. So we're talking about they don't have another way to put this gorilla down without killing it, or a tranquilizer dart. Do we want to trust the gorilla with a human life? And that was one of the ironic things is, you got all these people talking about how it's horrible we took a gorilla's life. Well, for fuck's sake, who's more fucking important, a gorilla or a child? God damn it. This is not even a fucking question. Stop sharing the fucking meme that fucking goddamn says, oh, you shot the poor endangered gorilla. Get the fuck over it. They're a fucking gorilla. They're not a human. If you think them at the same level as a fucking human, maybe you should stop and evaluate where our humanity lies. Are you a humanist or are you a fucking goddamn gorillaist? And wait, if you're a gorillaist, do you fucking eat meat? Oh, you do? You fucking eat meat too? Well, then how the fuck can you claim that the gorilla is more important than a fucking cow or a goddamn sheep or a fucking turkey? So stop with the goddamn self-righteous bullshit because you just want to get put up on a pedestal because you want to feel better than that parent. You want to make fun of somebody and belittle somebody to the point of that you get to feel good inside because you're a better fucking parent than them. Grow up. Grow the fuck up. That's what I fucking say. And yeah, I'm going to be an asshole about this because to me, what it does is it takes the insensitivity, Hannah. It takes the insensitivity to understand where that parent's coming through and what that parent has to go through, how you have to navigate the different things, and how people all interact differently and have different goddamn anxieties and social cues, and just lump it into this black or white, you're a bad parent or you're a good parent.
Well, yeah.
Fuck you. Yeah. That's what I say.
I don't really have a nearly as emotional a response as you do on this one, but this is just the typical way we work here. I look at this in a scientific manner, the way I try to look at everything. I try to keep my personal emotions out of the situation. She didn't do anything incredibly wrong. She does not deserve to be, put up on a pedestal or on a pyre and lit on fire, so to speak. But also, the situation is, how long do you think it takes a gorilla to pull apart a human? We've seen that kind of stuff happen. This is a situation that needed immediate results, and unfortunately, I was hoping that tranquilizer darts were quicker. But from the research and things that you've looked into, it seems like they're definitely not quick enough to take care of the situation. So that was really the only safe route for a small child in a gorilla enclosure. Hopefully, in the future, they'll find a better way to rock it. Keep kids out of there, keep problems from happening in these zoos. Otherwise, we could talk, a little bit more about whether or not it's good to have animals that are so dangerous they could kill humans if they accidentally fall into the pit. Really, that's all I can get out of this one. I'm not going to villainize anyone. I'm going to try my best to not be biased and share garbage on the internet. And this could be a good case where we probably shouldn't be saying that this woman was an absolute horrible parent. That would be really where I would go with this. I can't really go any further than that. This gorilla didn't deserve to die, but also, we do have to elevate a small child's life. It's a fucking
gorilla, dude. It's a fucking gorilla. What's more important, a rare gorilla?
A small child's life over the life of what would be considered a lesser primate.
Yeah. And I don't have any words. I don't have any sympathy. If you think a gorilla is worth more than a child's life just because you think there's overpopulation, fuck you. Figure out a different way to fix overpopulation than worrying about whether some person allowed their kid or accidentally missed their kid, or the kid wandered off because it was very busy, and we have capitalistic theories where we allow goddamn people to spend gooblerous amounts of money on fucking zoos. Maybe we should stop worrying about whether the mother didn't watch the kid and figure out how do we regulate this so it doesn't happen again.
I'm curious as to how many of really conservative people that are pro big business. Well, no, pro big business and pro deforestation. Let the economy do whatever it wants. The kind of the people that are responsible for gorillas being endangered and environments getting destroyed. I wonder how many of them are the ones that shared the pity the gorilla. We're so sad that when in the meantime they're fully supporting giant corporations that just mow down the Serengeti or any trees that they can see anywhere. I don't know. I think we pretty much killed this one down to the bottom. Pretty much as dead as that gorilla. What is it? Hammurabi?
I don't know the name.
I don't remember.
So as we close, I'll leave you with this quote: "A gorilla is dead, and a toddler is in the hospital. And we have armchair parents, and armchair zoo enclosure specialists, and armchair primatologists all weighing in to offer their different opinions. My opinion is that the whole thing sucks. A kid got hurt, a gorilla's dead. Maybe there's blame to be doled out, maybe there isn't. Maybe the mother was like a shitty hot tub mother. Or maybe she was a vigilante that blinked. I wasn't there, you weren't there. I don't know if she was playing on her phone or if the kid pulled one of those disappearing acts that no parent, no matter how much of a helicopter person they are, could control. But it doesn't stop the armchair parenting. The mother has faced a ton of scorn. She's received death threats, for fuck's sake. People have said that they should have shot the mother instead of the gorilla. Anyone who raises children will know that they can disappear in an instant because that's what children do, even ones that normally don't behave that way. Like the case with my mother running in front of an SUV. All you can do is hope that it doesn't end badly, and someone else is there to help. In my case, I got help from the driver who was on his game. The mother got help from the zoo staff who made a tough call to protect the child. But one thing I wonder about is how many of the people hurling vitriol at that mother have any experience raising children. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Cellar Door Skeptics. If you like what we do, make sure you go support us on Facebook. Head over to Patreon, sponsor us on Patreon, follow us on Twitter at Cellar Door Skep, or sponsor us by
being nice to us.
By being nice to us. Or by sharing our episode on your favorite social media. Thank you so much, and remember, help us prepare for the revolution. Have a good night, everyone.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker, cellardoorskeptics.com.